Picture this. You walk into your grandmother's house, and suddenly that familiar smell, maybe it's lavender soap or fresh-baked cookies, transports you back 20 years. You're 5 years old again. The feeling is so vivid, you can almost touch it. Here's the thing. Your brain just performed an incredible feat of navigation. Not through physical space, but through time itself. And it used the exact same neural machinery it would use to find your way around a room. This isn't poetry, it's neuroscience. In 2014, three scientists won the Nobel Prize for discovering what they called the brain's GPS system. They found special cells that create maps of physical spaces. But here's where it gets wild. Those same cells don't just map rooms and buildings. They map time. They map your relationships. They even map abstract ideas like success or failure. Think about how you describe your friendships. You have close friends and distant acquaintances. Someone might be above you in the company hierarchy or beneath your standards. These aren't just figures of speech. Your brain is literally placing these concepts on an invisible map. The same neural circuits that help you navigate your kitchen are organizing your entire mental world. When I first learned about this, I couldn't stop thinking about it for weeks. We've been using spatial metaphors forever, looking forward to something, moving past a breakup, climbing the career ladder. But we thought these were just convenient language tricks. Turns out, our brains actually work this way. Let me tell you what scientists discovered and why it changes everything about how we understand memory, relationships, and even consciousness itself. The discovery that started everything. Back in 1971, a neuroscientist named John O'Keefe was doing something that seemed pretty mundane. He was recording electrical signals from rat brains while they moved around a box. Nothing fancy, just rats doing rat things. But he noticed something odd. Certain brain cells would fire only when the rat was in a specific spot. Move the rat 2 inches to the left. Different cells would activate. Move it back. The original cells fired again. These neurons were creating a coordinate system, a map of the room inside the rat's brain. O'Keefe called them place cells. And for over 30 years, that discovery just sat there, interesting but not earth-shattering. Scientists knew the hippocampus, where these cells live, was important for memory. Now, they knew it also handled spatial navigation. Cool, but so what? Then in 2005, a Norwegian couple, May-Britt and Edvard Moser, found something even stranger. In a brain region right next to the hippocampus, they discovered grid cells. These cells fire in perfect hexagonal patterns as an animal moves through space. Imagine walking across a honeycomb where each hexagon triggers a different neuron. That's what grid cells do. Why hexagons? Turns out it's the most efficient way to cover a surface with the least overlap. Your brain evolved to use the same solution that bees use for their hives. Nature really does love geometry. Together with head direction cells, which track which way you're facing, and border cells, which fire near walls. These neurons create a complete positioning system. It's more sophisticated than any GPS humans have built, and it updates in real time, working even in complete darkness. The Mossers and O'Keefe shared the 2014 Nobel Prize for this work. But that was just the beginning. The speed cells nobody expected. You know when you're driving and you just know how fast you're going without looking at the speedometer? Or when you're walking in the dark and somehow don't crash into walls. For years, scientists couldn't figure out how grid cells knew how fast you were moving. The cells needed speed information to update your position accurately. But where was it coming from? In 2015, the same Moser team found the answer: speed cells. These neurons fire faster when you move faster, regardless of where you are or what direction you're heading. They don't care if it's dark or light, whether you're in a familiar place or somewhere new. They just track speed. I find this oddly comforting. Even when we feel lost or confused, part of our brain always knows how fast we're moving through the world. We're never as untethered as we think. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Scientists started wondering if the brain has this sophisticated mapping system for physical space, could it use the same system for other things? The answer completely changed how we think about the mind. Time cells, your brain's temporal GPS. Remember what you had for breakfast? Now think about what you'll do tomorrow. Congratulations, you just navigated through time using the same brain circuits that help you navigate through space. In the hippocampus, sitting right alongside place cells, scientists discovered time cells. These neurons fire at specific moments during an experience, creating a temporal map of events. When you remember your morning routine, these cells replay in sequence. Shower cell, coffee cell, commute cell. A fascinating study in 2020 recorded directly from human brains in epilepsy patients who already had electrodes implanted for medical reasons. They found human time cells that work just like the ones in rats. When patients recalled items from a list, researchers could predict the order just by watching which time cells fired. Actually, let me correct that. The cells don't just replay memories. They also compress and expand time. Ever notice how a boring meeting feels endless, but a great conversation flies by? Time cells literally change their firing patterns based on your subjective experience of time. They stretch and squeeze temporal distances just like grid cells handle spatial ones. This explains something that's puzzled philosophers for centuries. How do we experience the flow of time? We don't have a sensory organ for time, like we have eyes for light or ears for sound. But we have time cells creating an internal clock, mapping our journey through the temporal dimension. The implications are staggering. When someone with PTSD has a flashback, their time cells might be misfiring, placing them at the wrong coordinates on their temporal map. When elderly people feel like time speeds up, maybe their time cells are covering more temporal ground with each firing. The social GPS you never knew you had. Okay, this is where things get really weird. And by weird, I mean amazing. You know how you instinctively understand social hierarchies? How you know who's above or below you at work? Who's in your inner circle versus your outer circle of friends? Your brain maps social relationships using the exact same grid system it uses for physical space. In 2021, researchers had people play a role-playing game where they interacted with different characters. Each character had two traits: power, high or low, and affiliation, friend or foe. While people played, scientists scanned their brains. The hippocampus treated these social dimensions just like physical coordinates. Moving from interacting with a powerful enemy to a weak friend activated the same navigation circuits as walking from one corner of a room to another. Your brain literally places people on a social map. This isn't metaphorical. When you think about your relationship with your boss versus your best friend, specific grid cells fire as if you're looking at two different locations on a map. The closer someone is to you socially, the closer they are on this neural map. I think about this whenever I'm at a party now. My brain is constantly updating everyone's position on my social map. That awkward person I just met, they're getting placed somewhere. That old friend I'm reconnecting with, their coordinates are shifting. It explains so much about social dynamics. Why we talk about social climbing and knowing your place. Why social rejection physically hurts. You're literally being moved to a different location on someone's mental map. Why we feel distant from people we used to be close to. The research even shows that people with larger social networks have more refined social maps, with better resolution and more precise positioning. It's like having a high-definition social GPS versus a blurry one. Your brain's abstract universe. But wait, it gets even stranger. Your brain also creates maps of completely abstract concepts. Scientists have found that when you think about ideas like size and sound frequency, or even democracy versus autocracy, your hippocampus treats these concepts as locations in space. One study had people learn about birds that varied in neck length and leg length. Not real birds, just abstract cartoon birds. After learning, participants' brains had created a two-dimensional map with neck length on one axis and leg length on another. Each bird occupied a specific location in this bird space. Think about what this means. When you're learning any new concept, your brain is literally mapping it. That's why we use spatial language for abstract ideas, high quality, deep thoughts, broad knowledge. Your brain is actually placing these concepts at different coordinates in mental space. This might be why the memory palace technique works so well. We memorize things by placing them in imaginary rooms. You're not tricking your brain into using spatial memory for non-spatial information. You're just making explicit what your brain does naturally, turning all information into maps. The smell that takes you back. Now we get to the really personal stuff. That smell at your grandmother's house I mentioned earlier. Let's talk about why it hits so hard. Your hippocampus doesn't just create maps, it links them together. A single smell can activate place cells, time cells, and social cells simultaneously. Suddenly, you're not just remembering grandma's house. You're there, you're 5 years old, and you're feeling the safety of being loved. All these maps activate at once, creating that overwhelming rush of memory. Scientists call this pattern completion. Give your brain one piece of a memory, a smell, a song, a photo, and it reconstructs the entire map. It finds the spatial coordinates, grandma's kitchen, the temporal coordinates, Sunday mornings in 1995, and the social coordinates, feeling cherished and protected. This is why Alzheimer's is so devastating. It's not just losing memories. It's losing the maps themselves. Patients literally can't navigate their own mental landscape anymore. They're lost in time, space, and relationships all at once. Actually, that's not quite right. Let me rephrase. The maps don't disappear all at once. They fade gradually, starting with the most recent ones. That's why Alzheimer's patients often remember their childhood perfectly, but can't remember what happened 5 minutes ago. Their old maps are still intact. They just can't create new ones or find their way to recent coordinates. How your brain predicts the future. Here's something that blew my mind. Your place cells don't just track where you are. They predict where you're going. When rats approach a decision point in a maze, their place cells start firing in sequences representing different possible paths. The brain is literally simulating future journeys before choosing which way to go. It's running navigation software, testing different routes. Humans do this too, but not just for physical paths. When you're planning your career or deciding whether to start a relationship, your brain runs simulations on your mental maps. Those gut feelings about whether something is the right direction, that's your navigation system calculating routes through abstract space. A 2023 study showed this directly. People played a game where they navigated through conceptual spaces, choosing between options that varied on two abstract dimensions. Their hippocampal cells fired in sequences predicting future choices, just like rats planning routes through a maze. This might explain intuition. When something feels right or wrong, but you can't explain why, maybe your brain has run simulations on your mental maps and calculated the likely outcomes. Your conscious mind hasn't caught up, but your navigation system already knows which path leads where. The dark side of mental maps. Not everything about this system is wonderful. Sometimes our maps trap us. Depression might be partly a mapping disorder. Studies show depressed people have less detailed mental maps with fewer distinct locations. Everything starts to feel the same gray coordinates repeated endlessly. That's why depressed people often describe feeling stuck or like they're going nowhere. Their mental maps have collapsed. Anxiety could be the opposite problem. Too many possible paths, too many simulations running at once. Your brain can't stop calculating all the ways things could go wrong. Every decision point spawns 1,000 potential routes, most leading to catastrophe. PTSD definitely involves mapping dysfunction. Traumatic memories get encoded with such strong coordinates that any similar input, a sound, a smell, even a vaguely similar social situation, snaps you back to those coordinates. Your time cells fire as if it's happening now. Your place cells activate as if you're there. The map overwhelms present reality. But understanding this mechanism opens new treatment possibilities. Some therapists now use virtual reality to help PTSD patients literally remap their trauma. By revisiting traumatic coordinates in a safe, controlled way, patients can update their maps, adding new pathways and exits that didn't exist in the original experience. Your nightly cartographer. You know what's happening while you sleep? Your brain is reorganizing all these maps. During deep sleep, your hippocampus replays the day's experiences at high speed, up to 20 times faster than real. It doesn't just replay them. It mixes them, combines them, finds patterns across different maps. That's why sleeping on a problem actually works. Your brain is running navigation algorithms on your mental maps, finding new routes between concepts you hadn't connected before. That moment when you wake up with a solution, your brain found a new path through abstract space while you slept. Dreams might be what happens when this process gets weird. Your brain starts connecting maps that shouldn't connect. Suddenly you're in your childhood home, but it's also your office, and your high school teacher is there, but they're also your current boss. Your navigation system is doing midnight maintenance, creating surreal hybrid maps. Actually, I should mention, scientists aren't totally sure about the dream part. That's more speculation. But the replay during sleep is absolutely real. They've recorded it happening. Rats run through mazes in their dreams. Their place cells firing in the exact sequences from their daytime exploration, building better maps. So how do we use all this? How do we build richer, more detailed mental maps? First, novelty is crucial. New experiences create new maps and force existing maps to expand. That's why travel feels so enriching. You're literally adding new territories to your mental world. But you don't need to go to Paris. Even taking a different route to work or trying a new restaurant expands your neural cartography. Physical exercise helps too. Moving through space strengthens your navigation circuits, which strengthens all your mapping abilities. Runners and dancers often report better memory and clearer thinking. They're not imagining it. They're building stronger mapping machinery. Social diversity matters enormously. Meeting people from different backgrounds doesn't just broaden your perspective metaphorically. It literally expands your social maps, creating new coordinates and connections. Your brain becomes better at navigating complex social situations because it has a richer map to work with. There's also something called cognitive mapping exercises. Mindfulness meditation, for instance, might work partly by helping you observe your own mental maps. When you notice your thoughts without judgment, you're essentially looking at your map from above, seeing the paths your mind typically takes. Memory palace practitioners are explicit map builders. They're consciously creating detailed spatial maps and populating them with information. It's like giving your brain a detailed blueprint instead of letting it sketch its own rough map. But here's the thing, you can't force it. Your brain builds maps automatically, constantly, whether you're aware of it or not. The best you can do is give it rich raw material to work with. The future of mind mapping. Scientists are just beginning to understand this system. New tools let researchers watch human brain cells in real time, seeing maps form and shift. Some researchers think we'll eventually be able to diagnose mental health conditions by looking at someone's neural maps. Imagine a brain scan that shows your social map is fragmenting, warning of impending depression before you feel symptoms. There's even talk of enhancing our mapping abilities. Not with drugs or implants, well, maybe eventually, but with targeted training. Virtual reality programs that specifically exercise your grid cells. Games designed to expand your conceptual maps. Social apps that help you maintain richer relationship coordinates. The philosophical implications are staggering. If all thought is navigation, what does that mean for consciousness? Are we just sophisticated GPS systems finding our way through mental space? Or is there something more? I don't have answers to those questions. Nobody does yet. What I do know is this. Right now, as you read these words, your brain is mapping them, creating coordinates for these ideas, linking them to things you already know, building bridges to your own experiences. Tomorrow, these concepts will be part of your mental landscape, territories you can revisit and explore further. And that smell at grandma's house, it's not just triggering a memory. It's activating a whole universe of maps, spatial, temporal, social, emotional, all intersecting at a single point. You're not just remembering, you're navigating through the deepest architecture of your mind. The next time you describe something as close to your heart, or say you need to distance yourself from a problem, remember, you're not speaking metaphorically. You're describing the literal geography of your thoughts. We are all explorers, constantly charting the infinite territories within our own minds. That's the real discovery here. We're not just conscious beings who happen to use spatial metaphors. We're navigational beings, forever mapping our way through the strange, beautiful country of consciousness itself.